Okay, so we're going to continue Hilchas Niddah and Kuf Peiches. And some of the halachas in them are quite relevant. Just spend a couple minutes, not too much, what we did last time. The beginning of Siman was about marois, about different colors. When a woman sees blood, usually we assume blood is red. But it could come in different colors. It can be that the blood is a little bit of a different shade. And we hold that all shades of red are tameh. Even though it is true that in principle it could be that what she's seeing is not the dam from the makor, the blood from the actual uterus, which is the dam tameh. It could be that it's from somewhere else. Here we're not talking about the possibility that it's a makkah. Anytime, of course, there's the potential that she has a bruise somewhere. We said that there are some leniencies for that she'd be toile on that. We definitely don't want her vesset period to be messed up because of that. So it's important to make that determination as to why she's seeing. How did this come about? Now, we already covered the various ways the blood can come about besides the period. It could be strenuous exercise, it could be medical examination, which we'll talk about more today, excitement, all kinds of ways that a woman can see blood. And of course, it's not only a question of vesset, determine a vesset, establish a vesset, somehow interfere with the vesset. Does she have to wait a full time or not? Is it clean or not? There are many, many questions that we have to resolve if a woman sees blood. And we said that if it's a ketem, it's more derabanan. So we haven't really gotten too much into the halachas of ketem, but it's important to make that differentiation that a stain is not exactly the same halacha as in blood. In the very, very beginning, we spoke about sensation. A woman having a sensation, actually feels the blood going through her body, and in that event, it's obviously much more serious because this is the real thing happening at least approximately the time she's expecting it to happen. But regardless of whether she feels or not, today, a good amount of blood, and it's more likely than not that it's from the core, she's going to assume that it's that, and she's going to be unclean for a number of days. She's going to have to go to the mikveh. However, sometimes she doesn't really see it just by it coming out. She checks herself. And checking herself could also be either as a result of checking herself while she has her period, that she no longer has blood, or checking herself for some other reason. She needs to check herself. And there's various possibilities of why a woman would be checking herself, not during the time of her, which one of them we're going to cover today. It has to do with foferet. So anyway, with dam, the coloration is important. Obviously, we said that if she sees some unusual color that is totally unrelated to red, then we don't have to really be concerned about it. But if it's anything that's close to a shade of red or black, which supposedly is red that somehow became black, then she needs to ask a shaila. She needs to ask a question to a competent rabbi, and the reason for that is because a woman should not make the decision herself in this kind of situation for a variety of reasons. Reason number one, first of all, she's no ge'av or no ga'at v'dav. She's biased here. She may not be such an expert. As it is, we say that we're not bikim. So even the biggest chachamim, unless of course they have tremendous experience, are not exactly bikim in what constitutes clean or unclean blood. Even during the time of the chachamim, some said we're not that proficient in that. We don't specialize in that. We're not experts. So we're machmir, but you don't want to be unnecessarily machmir either. So you have to be careful. Somebody comes and asks you, your wife asks you, what is this? If you're not sure, obviously the right thing to ask somebody who may be able to help. So we spoke about, can the husband make a decision because of ne'emanus? So in these kind of cases, if the husband really is familiar, does have experience, we don't suspect that he will, because he's biased, or somehow related, in other words, this affects him, he will not render the right decision. There are situations where perhaps it is best for the husband not to make the decision. The shaila was, can the woman make the decision herself if there's nobody else to ask? She should ask. Can she compare? Can she figure, well, when I had this question come up last time I asked, and it looks exactly the same thing as it did last time. And last time I was told that it's clean. So there's a question the person can, a woman on her own. She's not approached anybody yet. Can she figure this out on her own? Not really. She shouldn't really figure this out on her own. A question like that could be a big question, potentially a big question, and you consult with somebody who's qualified to be consulted with this. However, in the last seif that we did, we had a question of nemonis, of a different sort. In the first example, we had a situation where a woman says, Rabbi, I had a bad, a piece of cloth in which I saw some blood, or I'm not sure if it was blood, but it was discoloration. I don't have it, I lost it, but it looks exactly like this that I'm showing you now, which is not something that she has doubts over. She's just showing something to compare. And she says, it looked exactly the same thing.
That she has doubts over.
No, she's not seeing, she did not bring something now and says, you know what, Rabbi, what I had last time is exactly the same thing. And this is what I checked myself. It's not that she has a question of halacha, a halachic question about this bad. She's just using it for comparison. It's a chart, a color chart, if you want to call it that. Just to describe to the chacham that she's consulting with what she saw that she lost, that she doesn't have in front of her. So now we said that ne'emenes isha loima kazera itivi bat, even I lost it, and therefore if it's mare lavan or york, if it's white or green, tahor. Okay, so that was easy relatively, because we say that a woman has nemonis to an extent. The Torah says v'safralo, she will count to herself. Plus, we also have to add that we don't suppose that she's also colorblind. In other words, we're not going to suppose that she's imagining it to be the same. Not only does she have nemonis, but we also assume she knows what she's talking about. So we're saying two different pieces of information. Nemonis plus she can compare. She can be relied or trusted upon to say, this looks like that. It's fine. The problem arises when she comes to us with a real shaila. And this one I maybe did not clarify enough, so we'll go and just spend another minute clarifying. The second example was, she brought before a chacham a piece of cloth, and we can see it's tameh. Or we had our doubts, if it's tameh or not. And she's telling you, oh, by the way, let me share with you my experience with a similar incident that I had in the past. This chacham, so-and-so, said it was okay last time I asked him. We don't rely on her testimony. It's a little bit strange, it's unusual that she's coming here and telling this Rav, by the way, this is what that rabbi told me. So I saw the Badi Ashulchan bring down, and it helps sometimes, to clarify this, because because if you read the seif, you wonder for yourself, the first time at least, when you learn something doesn't make sense, something is missing here. So I like what the Badi Ashulchan inserts, that he says it must be talking about that the first person she asked was a greater chacham than the one she's asking now. Was more knowledgeable, and she just happens to be out of town. She happens to be somewhere else, and she's telling him, "Oh, by the way, just not sure. Let me tell you what this other chacham, who does know about her situation, maybe she regularly consults, told me it was okay." So on that, we don't rely on her. Why? Because we have the Reusa in front of her, we have the problem before us, and we can make that determination now, and figure out if that's the case or not. So we don't really need the other testimonies, because the Reusa is here. Plus, on that, she doesn't have nemonis. We say, like we explained last time, that it could be that she imagines that it's the same, but in fact it never was so. She didn't really ask, perhaps. So we have to go by what we see right now, and we don't rely on that testimony. Another little point that's also perhaps was not clear enough was what the Shach and Taz would hold when the dam first came out. It appeared Tohar, then Tameh. We don't hold like the Bach. We don't hold that we have to wait until it dries. We don't assume that colors change. It could happen, but we don't for sure have to wait. I think the Bach is the one that suggests. But the question was still what happened if nevertheless there was time difference between the first observation and the second observation. And the first observation was Tohar, and then it became. So we mentioned the Chacham Tzvi, that you always go Basar Yitzi. The Chacham Tzvi is the one that says you go by what you see at the first observation after it comes out of the body. It could be, however, that the dam will change, and it will become, or it will be closer and resemble a dam that's tameh later on. So we said that the Shach and Taz are machmir. Now what I mean by machmir is that apparently they would hold that if in fact it did become of a shade or a color that would be tameh, that would be considered tameh, we would say that she's tmeya. Even though we don't hold like the Bach, that you have to wait to make that determination. That's where there would be choylek on the Bach. Bach says you would wait, maybe it will change. No, we don't have to wait. But if in fact it did change colors, we would be machmir and say, well, even though it originally didn't look like it, but now it does look like it, and we're going to say tmeya. But where the Chacham Tzvi said, you go Basar Yetzia, bein letomeh, bein letoher. All right, now we're going to go into a little bit of a slightly different area that does not have to do with colors. It's not a question of nemanus. It's a sugya, it's a whole sugya in itself in Maseches Niddah, which involves several dinim. It's all one seif, but there's several dinim. Din number one involves sticking a tube inside the woman through the vaginal tract. Another halacha is pieces coming out from the uterus, falling out, and I'm going to explain what that is. The entire uterus coming out, and something called ptichas hakever. Ptichas hakever is a term that's used in Hilchas Niddah to describe the opening of the womb, the grave, opening of the grave because of the tumah. There's a big machlokes in the poskim if it's possible for the woman's womb to open up and for her not to see any blood. Machlokes in the Gemara, the basis, I should say, for a lot of this is the Gemara, is that sugya. But this is further elaborated on by the Rishonim and by the Achronim because of various ramifications. In other words, depending how you hold and how you explain the sugya, according to Rashi or according to others, where there could be differences. And this is very much halacha l'maisa. So let's take the first din. The din of Ichnisa Shvoferes V'Tzia Bodam. That's the Seif. Let's discuss that one first. Mechaber says that if a woman sticks a tube inside of her, V'Tzia Bodam, and sees in it, and I intentionally say in it versus out of it, if she sees in it dam, tehora, she's clean. Now that's very interesting. Well, first of all, why should she be clean? What if this dam really is coming from the makor? After all, this is what we've been saying all along. Dam from the makor is the problem. This is not dam min hatzdadim, from the sides. Here there's no question where she was getting the blood from. And here the Mechaber says clearly, so what's the question here? Siman Kuf Peiches Seif Gimel. Yeah. What's going on here? First of all, why would a woman stick a tube in? As I was reviewing the sugya, I was looking for someone to explain why would she want to do that. Could you think of why she would want to do that? A tube. Right, so we've already spoken a little bit about tubes. Apparently tubes were used. And the basic understanding here is that she's checking herself if she's really, if she's bleeding from a particular spot. She's not using the tube in itself to see if this will trigger blood. That's not the purpose of this tube. But she's sticking something in the hollow tube, a cotton swab. Is that how it's called, cotton swab? Yeah? She's sticking something within the hollow of the tube, right? She doesn't want to stick it without a tube because she wants to make sure that the blood goes directly on the cotton swab. Not, in other words, not on the tube itself. There may be blood from the sides. So in order for her to avoid getting on that cotton swab blood from the sides, what is she going to do? She's going to protect that bdika by putting it in a metal tube. And the metal tube will be a chatzitza between the sides, the walls of the vagina area, right? And the inside. In other words, there's no, like this, any blood that does come on the tip will be coming from the makor, right? She's sticking it all the way. This way she's going to be able to ascertain that it's not blood from around. She wants to see if there's blood coming out from there. So that's why she's doing this. All right. So here the Gemara says like this. We have a drasha, and it's incredible how the Chachamim, through their Masara, through their tradition, through their learning, were able to be medayik what the Torah intended when the Torah says that the dam is flowing bibesora on her flesh. You could have said just basar, you could have said basar, but it said besora. And the Gemara says we're medayik, we learn from that, we have a drasha for that in order for the woman to be tameya, it has to be that the blood came onto her basar, her flesh. It comes streaming out on her basar. That's what renders her tameya. There's several additional drashas there. One is that she had actually felt it. Yeah? That was another drasha. And another drasha is that it's coming into her basar. So, what do we learn from that? We learn from that a bdika shpoiferes, if she were to put in a tube, any blood inside of the tube would not be tmeya. Would not make her tmeya. Why not? So Rashi explains, because it's very clear, you need from the drasha, we need for the woman to see blood, bibesora only, bekotle betarechem, without a mechitza, without a hepsek, he says. Blood in the tube did not go on her basar. So somehow if she was able to catch the blood in a little tube, that would not render her tmeya. You know how they draw blood from you? That's also a kind of tube. A syringe, they call it. Yeah, yeah.
It depends what they use.
It depends what they use. Yeah, that's a tube. So somehow, that's what the Gemara is talking about. If you're able to draw blood out and it's not going out in her, that doesn't make her tmeya. So that's Rashi's explanation is because the tube serves as a mechitza, and this is, of course, not what the Torah had in mind.
So,
no, she wants to know if she has an injury. She wants to know if there's dam there. We don't know exactly what the circumstances are. She wants to know.
but if she was going to find dumb, it's not going to make her tama either.
No, right, not for right now. She needs to know, for some reason, if she has blood.
May have felt something. She may
Felt that she wants to know what's going on there. Yeah. I'm not sure myself. All the reasons of why a woman would want to check. Let's just assume that she needs to check because maybe she's had trouble in the past. And she says, do I have something there? And there's a question whether this is the time of the Veset or not. That's what makes it a little bit more complicated. But let's assume that this is not the time of her Veset. So then it's less complicated. Is there something there or not? All right. But the Rambam and from others, it's understood a little bit differently. That the drasha of Chazal was one that the dam has to be besora, because that's the normal way for women to see. And by bdikas shfoferes, that's not the way women see. So the Rambam learns that the reason why the bdikas shfoferes does not render her tmeya, because that's not the standard way women see blood. Nothing about a mechitza, nothing about the tube separating from the walls, just that this is not the way it happens. A woman does not see blood once a month through a bdikas shfoferes. She sees it, and she knows it, and it's there in the basar. This is not the standard way, so this does not make her tmeya. And that's what the Mechaber says here. That's the case he brings here. But there's some nafkaminas between how you interpret the drasha and the Gemara. And the nafkaminas are like this. Well, what happens if there was blood on the outside of the tube? Here we're saying she detected blood inside, so we had. Rashi says, it's a mechitza. Rambam says, this is not the way blood is seen by the woman once a month. All right, then what happens if the blood was outside of the tube? So based on those two different ways of interpreting the drasha and the Gemara, seeing dam on the outside of the tube, according to Rashi, it would make her tmeya. No more mechitza. Whereas according to the Rambam, I don't care where you see blood, this is not the standard way of seeing blood. And that will be one nafkamina between two ways of interpreting the drasha. What about the following situation? It's close to the time of her Veset, around that time. She sticks in the tube close to the makor, and she gets blood inside the tube. Is she tmeya or not? According to Rashi, no. Because it's not touching her stodim. According to the Rambam, yes. Right? Because this is around the time of her Vesed. She's expecting it. So I don't care if you stuck a tube in there. This is the time she sees. Just because you stuck a tube does not make it any less. Whereas according to Rashi, no. It has to be touching the Basar. So these are, the Achronim talk about these kind of nafkaminas. That there will be nafkaminas between one way of learning versus the other way of learning Pshat in the drush of the Gemara.
That last case.
Yeah.
So that she's taught checking.
Right. But this, because it's talking about during the time of her Vesed, where she's actually seen. But she stuck a tube to catch the blood, if any blood. Yeah.
The question is, does the tube help to avert that?
To avert that. And there's, you believe it or not, Rosh Shlomo Zalman Auerbach has a whole tshuva on this for women who are having a difficult time ovulating on time after the mikveh. If they can use this method of having to wait less time, in other words, to be able to overcome this problem, he has a whole tshuva. He says that you may be able to have a leniency by using this method to capture the blood. I don't recall it now by heart, but I remember that there's something he writes about that, but not everybody, of course, holds by that. But it's interesting how he uses that to find a way, or to figure out a way for a woman to overcome certain problems. But this is a real...
Does he follow
Rashi, sure. Because if you look at the Badei HaShulchan, and you look at many of the contemporary poskim who talk about these sugyas as it is relevant to our times, they say we're machmir, like the Rambam in this case. It was like the second interpretation that, of course, during the Vesed it would not make a difference that you stuck a tube there. Whereas in the first example, all we have is the mechaber, is the rechnisa shvaferes that lotzio bodam tehora.
That's what we don't have.
Yeah, exactly, no Vesed, yeah. All right, this is a simpler. Well, I shouldn't say, no, not a simpler situation than what we're going to see next, because it does depend on various other factors that we're going to see. The Mechaber in Seif Gimel does mention the din towards the end that would clarify a little bit what he meant in the beginning. The last halacha in Seif Gimel speaks about pieces of blood coming out. So I don't want to confuse everything together, but I want to borrow, or I need to borrow one term that he uses there in order to understand the first halacha. The first halacha was about shvaferes. And the term he uses, we mentioned earlier, was that it's a term that we will see later on, B'ezrat Hashem, when we get to it. When a woman gives birth, or partial birth, the womb opens up. Right. So yeah, I'm going to translate it again. So that term is a term that we will see from time to time, which means that it is not possible for the kever. It's not possible. It's not possible for the kever, the tomb. The womb here is being called the tomb because of tuma, right?
Well.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. I guess it rhymes. Yeah. It's not possible for the tomb or for the womb to open up and for there not to be blood. If it opened up, let's call it dilation, because that's the term that the gynecologist is going to use when he's about to deliver a baby. 2 centimeters, 4, 6. You remember? It's been a while. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So once it's dilated enough, she's tmeya. To her husband, by the way. Her husband can no longer touch her, hold her. Yeah, hold her. She's having a baby. Oh, can you hold me and give me support? You need a lot of that. They need a lot of that all year long, even when they're not pregnant. But anyway, especially then, right? Well, if she's already dilated enough, we hold. When I say we hold, I say, generally speaking, we go like Rabbi Yehuda, that's ein tichas hakever b'li dam.
Dam already involved.
Yeah, there must have been some dam, even though you didn't see it.
How much? I mean, because that were, I think, what, 10?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So as long,
What point of order?
yeah, as long as it's over 2, like 2, 2.5.
And
Yeah.
if that work?
No. Gloves doesn't. Yeah, with a garter, maybe. I mean, isn't that what they do in at the wedding? The mitzvah dance? You hold it with a garter. 20 feet away. Yeah. No, anyway, here, yeah, safe distance, right. Anyway, you don't do that, but once it's dilated sufficiently, which is not the normal, okay, and it's it's pretty close to delivery, we assume that she's tmeya, because we hold like that. But do we? Do we always hold like that? It's not so pasha because it's a machlokes. Not everybody holds like Rabbi Yehuda. I mean, it appears to be that many poskim do say that that's the halacha, but not necessarily everyone. And here it's going to make a difference because the Mechaber tells us about dikas shoferes. No problem. We have a drush in the Gemara that it has to be blood going through the walls, and here it's through a tube. Doesn't render her tmeya. But at the end, he tells us about this klal, this rule that once there's an opening, there could be blood. There could be blood. I mean, she's tmeya. So how can we reconcile the two? If you hold ein ptichas kever beli dam, or shei efshar ptichas kever belo dam, it's not possible for the kever, for the womb to open up without there being blood. Then how does a bdikas, or how could a shfoferes, assuming of course that the shfoferes went all the way, assuming that, how could you say that she will ever be tahara then? So for that, the Beis Yosef explains. He explains himself in the Beis Yosef. And it's a little bit too in this seif, that we're only talking about a small shfoferes. A very thin tube. Exactly, it wasn't that much. In other words, when we're talking about bdikas shfoferes, we're talking about a very thin tube. Okay, how much? We'll get to that.
So ptichat hakever would even be that it's naturally opening.
So that's going to be a machlokes. That's going to be part of the machlokes. Did Rabbi Yehuda mean ptichas hakever naturally, when by the woman something is coming out and it's forcing the womb to open up, or can we force open the ptichas hakever too? You follow that?
Not the same thing.
Right? So that's going to be our big question today, because this, as you can begin to imagine, is very relevant when a woman goes and has a checkup, when she's pregnant or not. All kinds of biopsies. What kind of instruments do they use? It's along the lines of a shfoferes that they're sticking inside the woman's body that can make her a niddah during the time that she doesn't have a veset. So you see where this din, Sif Gimel, is relevant? The whole concept of Echnisa shfoferes and or the term that the Mechaber uses, ptichas hakever, can make a big, big difference in various kinds of biopsies. All right, so let's talk a little bit about that now. The Mechaber says, yeah.
If the biopsy, if it's a swim, take a thing and cut or for a sample,
right.
Then.
Okay, that's part of very good, excellent. So that's what we need to analyze, right? That's what we're going to do right now in the next few minutes, is analyze very briefly. I'm not going to get too much in detail, but briefly what the issues are. So the Mechaber makes it somewhat easy for us between what he says in this seif and what he explains in the Beis Yosef. Otherwise, he contradicts himself. I mean, thank you very much for telling us that bdikas shoferes is okay, but you yourself hold like Rabbi Yehuda, right? Shei efshar ptichas hakever belo dam. This is going to cause a ptichas hakever. So what are you going to say to that? So he's going to say to that it's only talking about a small shfoferes. The bigger question, however, is the klal, the rule of efshar ptichas hakever belo dam. Is that only if the woman is about to deliver, whether it's a full-term baby or not, right? In other words, for the woman's body to open up on its own, or does ptichas hakever happen from the outside by a doctor or by the woman sticking something up her body that would bring about the same effect? So that's the bigger question. Because we're talking about that there was no dam. That's the whole question. She doesn't see dam, but it's ptichas hakever according to Rabbi Yehuda. So the Niddah Yehuda is one of the famous poskim who's very machmer in all this. Says regardless of how you got her to open up, if it somehow got open a little bit, we hold she's tmeya. Beis Yosef, as we said, says it all depends what you stuck inside. So he pretty much goes around the question and he just says, you know what, let's assume, okay, it could happen if you did it too from the outside, but it would have to be big enough. So he just focuses on the size. And he says, Shvaferis, it's small, less than the width of a pinky finger. And Rav Moshe, I think, says less than 3/4 of an inch of an etzba. It's not a problem. Oh, Baruch Hashem. So now we're beginning to see a little bit sizes.
So that was the same thing we said was of an inch.
Yeah, same thing. Yeah, pretty much, yeah. I think beyond that is where the problem is. Beyond the 2 centimeters, the dilation is it's wider. It can be a problem already. Exactly. So here the Beis Yosef clearly is talking about a thin shperferis. Chazon Ish has a whole elaboration on it. And he says that perhaps what was meant with the ptichas hakever, when a woman is doing it inside. And the reason for that is because when a baby is about to be delivered, or something is about to come out of the woman, then naturally the whole body is working. The whole body is at work, expanding. There's arteries there, and as a result of that, that's what causes the blood to come out. But sticking in an instrument from the outside, who's to say that that's what was meant by Rabbi Yehuda too? That's not called a real ptichas hakever or ptichas harechem. Who's to say that for sure should bring a blood? Unless, of course, you see blood right away, which we're going to talk about next with doctors' examinations. But let's say you don't see any blood. Who's to say that that's what Rabbi Yehuda meant? So that is the bigger question here. So in our case, when you have a small instrument anyway, okay, so we resolve that situation. If you have a small instrument, so no matter how you hold, that perhaps even the Niddah Yehuda should be in agreement that what could happen with a very small instrument. I mean, does ptichas harechem mean even just a little bit? So the Chazon Ish beautifully analyzes this from the perspective of the anatomy of a woman. It makes sense to say that rule was said when a woman is giving birth, when something is coming out of her body, that something is happening within her body. That, of course, brings about the blood. But for a doctor, for her, to stick something in like a tube, who's to say that will cause her to see blood?
Then it wouldn't make this.
Exactly. Like if you hold like that,
If you hold it
that's
it
like,
wouldn't make a difference.
right, it wouldn't make a difference the size. Yeah, very true. Exactly. So you can imagine, I mean, the poskim talk about it a lot because it's relevant to biopsies, examinations of all, and there's different kinds of instruments that are being used. And that's where Moshe had to write his tshuva, of course, that he was asked and came up with the measurement. If it's small enough, it's less of a problem. Now, it doesn't mean that there's no problem. It's less of a problem because you still need to check. And that's what we're going to talk about now. We're going to talk about the various kinds of examinations.
Is it open, I'm more confused, is it open if it's a small tube as opposed to it not being a problem at all?
Yeah, no. For the most part, all the poskim agree that it's a problem if it's a big tube. Yes, because it's a big question here. However, we have the Rambam, right? Who doesn't? I mean, not everybody passes like Rabbi Yehuda. The Chachamim don't say that. Just somehow, a lot of the Rishonim hold like Rabbi Yehuda that's the halacha, but not everybody says that that's the halacha. You know, others hold that the halacha is just like the Chachamim say, that is not the case. You could have ptichas hakever without dam. Who's to say that there's dam? Just because the kever is open, just because the womb is open. Who's to say? So when you have that as a tziruf, if you need that as an additional opinion, I mean, you have who to rely on. I mean, you definitely have enough sources. So the question is, of course, what are the circumstances? And that's what leads us to the fine details of, depending what we're talking about. A woman that's going through an examination, and there are all kinds of examinations. I don't even know all of them by heart, by name. Different instruments are used. They're different sizes. Sometimes the doctor only sticks in a finger. He doesn't even stick in it. So you have his hand or his finger. You have an instrument. Sometimes the doctor will tell you, I'm not going to go into the womb. But who says that he did or not? Okay, then you have an exam that produced blood. Oh, we're going to talk about that. Then you have an exam that produced blood. This is an exam that did not produce blood. Then you have the question of nemanas. What if you have any questions? Can you trust the doctor? Okay, what if she's pregnant? And during pregnancy, there are some biopsies, there are some examinations that go inside. They want to see how dilated she is. They want to see if she can hold a baby. Well, of course.
I mean, if it be Niddah?
Yes, if there's dam. There will be dam and Niddah technically.
Although she's not going through a whole
Although
cycle,
she's not
there's
going,
no
exactly, yeah.
But it'll still be Niddah.
Sure. Yeah, it doesn't happen regularly that I would see blood during her pregnancy, especially during her advanced stages of pregnancy. But it can happen. And if she does, she better check herself for more than one reason. Blood during pregnancy, she better run to the doctor. You don't want to see blood during pregnancy. Plus, be a Niddah. Yeah.
Kind of cycle.
Right, now it wouldn't be. It wouldn't affect her cycle, right?
Or if this is actually...
Okay, that's part of the question here. Right, that's part of the question, because we are toila and dam hamaka sometimes, right? We covered that.
Especially now with the dunks.
Exactly. Yeah, right on, yeah. So now that the doctor is inserting something inside, it's quite possible that he's the one to blame for causing the makkah. In other words, dam is coming out, which makes things worse for her. It's not only an exam, there's dam. But the doctor says, I assure you, lady, it's my fault. I bruised you on the sides. This is not dam for the mother. So that's the question, can you believe him? Yeah, that you have to ask George. Yeah.
The short answer to that is you can get time.
Yes.
And
right.
win.
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
That's a different issue.
Yes.
Can you win and can you collect different questions?
Right. So anyway, so that's the next question. All right, can we trust him? Because the moment you have blood plus the bdika, it complicates matters. So if the instrument is a small instrument, it's not during her veset anyway. And he tells you, listen, you see the size of this instrument? You know this exam that I just did? This exam does not go to that makor anyway. This is just around. You know, if you're healthy, whatever else he has. So he's telling us that, and we know for a fact, not just from relying on him, we know that this type of the exam, in quotes, the type of the name, is not an exam that goes to the makor inside. He's not supposed to. Could he have gone? Yes. If he pushed long enough and the instrument is long enough, it's possible. The finger cannot reach up there. We know that the finger is not able to go all the way. But the instrument, some yes. But he says, listen, this type of an exam does not go to the makor. The blood, yes, sorry. It was my fault because I can see and I can show you even, if you really don't trust me, that you got hurt a little bit from the sides. No problem. Send her home, she's clean. She's not. We want to be careful not to make a woman in need. So, nemanas, sometimes yes, sometimes not. There is reason to believe him. Like he tells you, this kind of an exam you can check yourself. Google it. This is not an exam that goes to the makor. This is an ordinary exam in that particular area of the nartik, as we call it. You know, the tzdadim, the size, to see the health, whatever else he has checked there. It's not going to go inside, or the instrument is not long enough. And even if it's long, but it's a small instrument. And he says, I caused it, we believe him. Hopefully the doctor is a trustworthy doctor. You know, he's not one that we have to suspect. However, if it is an exam that goes to the makor and there is blood, then there's very little we can do to help this woman. Because that pretty much tells her what happened here. The dam came from the makor perhaps. So the only question that really remains is what happened if the bdika is to the makor, but there's no dam. On that, we need the size of the tube that's going inside. If it's a very thin tube, that's pretty much the halacha here of the shreferes. Okay. However, a woman should check herself after such a bdika to make sure that there was no dam.
So now the thin tube would be because centimeters, and but it's still a problem. But it's always a problem.
It's going to be unless it tells us that it's from the side, and the doctor tells you, I know for sure. And, depending on the type of exam.
If you did, then it doesn't help in 2 centimeters.
Right.
As soon as there's blood.
It is a problem. Sure. And there's a lot of poskim who are machmir. It's very, very machmir, especially if it went to the makor and even if there's no blood.
Because of less than 2 centimeters.
Yeah, if it went all the way to the makor, they're machmir. But not everybody is machmir. If we know for sure it's a very small tube and we don't see any blood, it all depends who you go with. We have a mechaber here, bdikas shreferes. Would this constitute as a bdikas shreferes? Why not? We have ptichas kever, perhaps. So he himself said, the Messiah said, that if it's small enough, you don't have to worry about that. On top of that, we have the Shittas who say there's no such thing as ptichas kever if you're coming from the outside. So we have enough room.
Now all of this is the Rabbanon.
Yes. Mm-hmm. All right, so that's basically what it's all about when it comes to examination. A woman should ask what kind of an exam it is. If she has any doubts, speak to her doctor. If she can see blood, where did the blood come from, according to him?
Does it
Right.
make a difference whether does it make a difference whether he's a Jewish doctor or...
Right, obviously. With the Jewish doctors, there's more of an amonis than who's not Jewish.
No. The Jewish doctor who's not...
They're not the same like a non-Jewish
Like
doctor.
the same like a
Yeah,
non-Jewish.
exactly. The problem of nemonis, which is a problem sometimes. Could you really believe him? So if he tells you the type of exam that he just did on you, not on you, but on the woman, right? And this usually does not go to the makor to suspect that he went to the makor, even though there's dam. You may be able to trust him. That says, yes, I'm sorry.
Why would he blame? What is the
because
benefit for him to lie about going to the? If he's a non-Jewish doctor and there is blood, he's going to make up a story that he.
Because a woman is concerned, where's this blood coming from?
Right, she's
concerned. So he says, don't worry about it. This is not coming from your baby. It is not coming from the womb.
Oh, we're talking about where she's...
Yeah, it could be that she's pregnant. Sure, that's when many of his exams are done. Yeah.
And he knows what's going on.
Right.
And he doesn't help.
Yes.
So he's got invested in something that may not be true.
That's if the makor would be the problem.
Right.
But he's a doctor, then getting wounded by him is any better than going perspective. If he doesn't know the makor...
He wants to calm her down. This is less of an issue.
How would he know that the other one is... For him, it's not
Professionally, it's not good if there's blood coming down the makor that he caused it.
So as from a profession, as a doctor, he would not want to admit.
He would not, exactly.
Regardless of the whole...
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Sure. All right, the other ones are interesting. The other halachas here are like this. Let's say she saw dam in a piece. A piece came out of her. This is another part of the sugya there in the Gemara. She sees dam in the folds, cracks, whatever you want to call them, the folds of this piece. A piece came out.
What is it?
Skin, something. Yeah, we don't know. We'll see what the Mechaber tells us to do with it in a moment. Then we'll figure it out.
You have to bury it.
Yeah, well, it depends if she was pregnant or not. We'll see. So this is the sugya. This is part of the sugya that what if she sees pieces coming out? And it could be dry blood, a membrane of some sort, different things coming out of the body, and there was blood in it. Even if this piece is mevuka'at, means that there's folds and there's grooves or cracks. The dam is there. You see actual real blood in the bekayim. And this blood is then not going through a tube. It's actually touching the sides, the flesh. Tehora, she's still clean. Why? This is also not the way of seeing a period. This is not something normal. This is, if anything, it's more similar to a makkah. You don't have to worry about this. So this one is a little bit, in a sense, even more lenient because it says even if it's not a tube, even though the dam can be observable on this chatichas and touching the basar, still this is not the regular way. This is the way we paskin. In other words, this is also machlokes in the Gemara. But this is the way we paskin, that regardless of seeing real blood in the bekoim of these pieces, this is not the way for the woman to see blood. All right. Rashi explains this because according to the Das Chachamim, since this is not the way for the woman to see blood, if so muchach, we can understand from this that this is not dam nida klal. That's how Rashi would interpret the pshat in the Gemara. Since this is not the way, the blood that you do see is not dam nida. Whereas from the Rambam is mashma. Actually, there's a Bach on this. The Bach says that if there was real dam nida on it, she would be tmeya. It's just that Rashi was learning pshat that the fact that she saw it this way, we assume that this is not dam nida. But if in fact there was dam nechaticha, perhaps she would be tmeya. That's how the Bach learns. In other words, if it would be real dam nida, then she would be tmeya. Otherwise, we assume this is not the way she sees, so she's okay. According to the, not Rambam, according to Rabbeinu Shimshon Mekutzi, the Rosh, the Pshat is that this is not the way Dam Niddah comes. So even if there would be Dam Niddah, she would be Tahara. So it would be a different way of learning. Either you learn like Rashi, or you learn like Rabbeinu Shimshon, or the Rosh, that this is not the way that Dam Niddah comes at all. So even if it would be Dam Niddah, she would be Tahara. All right. Either way, we have the Mechaber. The Mechaber says in such circumstances where there's pieces coming out, if you see the blood, we are Mekel. We say that this is not the way for a woman to see regular Niddah, Dam Niddah, and therefore she's clean. Now comes the very complicated situation, which is actually relevant today. This is also taken from Rabbeinu Shimshon. The third scenario here is V'chen isha shenekar makor shela. If you have a woman whose womb, first I'll translate it literally, and then I'll tell you what it's called. A woman whose womb was uprooted from her. Uchemin chatichos basar noiflim mebeis achitzon tehora. And all kinds of pieces of flesh are falling into the vaginal area. She's clean, as we'll see in the Ramah, even if there's blood in. What's going on here? For that, you have to study a little bit of medicine, anatomy of a woman. There is something called a uterine prolapse. Uterine prolapse. Basically, what it is that the uterus can fall, can collapse. It could collapse so much as for it to actually come out completely from the vagina. A piece of flesh. All of a sudden, something sticking out, protruding.
So when
No, nothing to do with miscarriage altogether. Just talk about the uterus itself. And some say that's what he's talking about. In modern Hebrew, it's called snichat harechem. Snichat harechem. Yes, and this is a medical issue. And it affects certain women, either older women or women who have become very, very weak in the pelvic area. Where the pelvic area, the ligaments there, they simply are, the muscles can no longer hold the uterus in place.
So it's a younger woman.
No, I don't think so. No. But I haven't done a whole study on this, but this is pretty much a medical problem that can happen. And some say that that's what Rabbeinu Shimshon is talking about. That this is an unusual situation. I think it is quite unusual. And when that happens, even though pieces are coming out, Tahara, she's clean. But the Mechaber says, I have some conditions, 2 conditions. Because this is not so simple. Because we're talking about that there's blood there too. These are not just pieces. The Ramah says, Afilu ro'so dam. Even though she's seeing blood during this time. As long as there's pieces there in the beis achitzon, the vagina, Tahara, she's clean. Why? Because the talina nadam bechaticha, we will say that the dam is coming from those pieces themselves, not from her niddah. Because we know her uterus moved. This is a form of makkah. But the Mechaber says, but wait a minute, not so simple. Yes, true, it's like a makkah, but you have to look at the following. Take those pieces and put it in warm water. If they don't dissolve, then okay. Otherwise, it's just like blood. Now he adds a very important condition, and we're talking about very small pieces. Dumya the shveferes that I told you before is just like the size of the shveferes I told you before. You know why? Because abal chaticha gdoila, if it would be a big piece, tmeya for another reason. Why would a big piece make her tmeya even afilu lo ro'a saklum shenisi bad lefish efshar leptichas hakever below dam? Because it's not possible for her to have a ptichas hakever without some blood coming out from the makor. Afilu benefel shelo nigvera tzurasa, even though this is a miscarriage, meaning that it's stillborn, as we would call it, I think. No? What's the difference between stillborn and miscarriage? It's not completely developed. Yes, you're right. Yeah, exactly. So we're talking about a miscarriage. A nefel shelo nigvera tzurasa, a fetus which is not completely formed. The kever was opened up. Even a small piece came out. So the Mechaber is telling us, we're talking about small pieces here because otherwise we have another problem. It's ptichas hakever. You're right. It's a form of makkah. You're right. Something came out of her, but it's a ptichas hakever. It came out from her. So even the Chazon Ish would say, that's not the question here. Right.
something.
Right. Sure.
Then
If she sees blood,
if
for
she
sure.
sees blood,
If she doesn't see blood, how do we know if there was a ptichas
no,
hakever?
let's assume the tikkun hakever.
Right.
But that in turn which causes
Yeah, it makes no difference.
Makes no
No, it makes no difference, yeah. The only thing is that the Chazon Ish would say that perhaps if the kever or the womb is opening up as a result of external pressure, that this may not constitute as a ptichas hakever. But lemaisa, we hold that it's not going to make a difference here. The Mechaber does not make that distinction. So just to finish up over here, we're talking about an unusual situation where you have pieces or the entire uterus coming out, pieces are falling out, there's blood coming out. The Ramah seems to say very easy. It says, as long as there's pieces there, any blood you see is associated with those pieces. The Mechaber makes some conditions. He tells us they better be small pieces, and you have to see that those pieces are not nimochu. They don't dissolve. Otherwise, it's interesting that if you look at the crazy place here, I think there's some other achronim that say that Rabbeinu Shimshon's scenario was only the whole makor, not pieces. So that, in other words, is an interesting chiddush. In other words, even though the whole makor came out, and there's blood, of course, still, we could be makel. However, obviously the poskim say that one has to be very, very careful, not just to say a woman is okay, you see blood all there, and to just blame it on the makor coming out. You really have to see, like the Mechaber says, how big the pieces are, because you have the other issue of tichas makor. So in the Beis Yosef, where he talks about this sugya, or this Rabbeinu Shimshon, he simply says that if there's dam coming out at the same time, not just the chatichas, not just in the chatichas, but other dam coming out, she would be tmeya. It appears that only the Ramah is the only one that says here, afilu ro sodam, even though she saw blood. As long as there's chatichas still in the base achitzan shelo, in the vaginal area, is tehora. Why? Because we attribute the dam to the chatichas. So that's very interesting. This is one case where the Ramah seems to be more mekel than the Mechaber. But anyway, the Mechaber is telling us at least that as far as the other issues, just make sure there's small pieces. But that does not help us if there's real blood. If there's real blood coming out at the same time, it's not a simple matter. So I saw the poskim. The poskim talk about this problem. If a woman has this problem and there's other blood coming out, then she's going to be a niddah. According to the Beis Yosef, for sure. So it's not, in other words, even though we just read it and we assume, oh, okay, it's chatichas or it's the makor coming out, it's not a simple matter. Even though it's more like kamaka, there's always the question of tichas hakever here, which the Ramah here does not address. I think the Ramah is only talking about the actual examples here of chatichas being small, maybe, like the Mechaber says. Or the way he explains it, the talina nadam bechaticha hoil v'yadinu vaday sheneka mekora u'machmas maka here. So it's dam machmas maka. So it could be that that's really part of the machlokes. Can we attribute this as a regular dam machmas maka, not niddah? Which is a big question in the poskim today. What do you do? And it's not a simple matter to resolve. If in fact you see other blood other than the chatichas, it's not a simple matter because it's not very clear. From the Beis Yosef, it appears that if there's other blood, she's tmeya. But from the Ramah, it appears to be that it could be that this is treated like another makkah. So anyway, hopefully there won't be that many situations like this. But it's important to realize that there is a concept called tichas hakever. And that, of course, without this problem of the uterus coming out, tichas hakever can come about through miscarriages, can come about through all kinds of situations. Where we didn't even talk about all the exams. So there's some exams which really open up the woman a lot. And there's almost no doubt that the kever was open. So the question is, how open was it? So even if there's no dam, it would be a problem. Now, it doesn't mean she shouldn't get this exam done. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes an exam is important. There are some exams that women really should not take, because then they get very, very scared if they're told some bad news. And sometimes it's better not to know a certain thing, even though the doctors tell you, you got to prepare for it. It's not such a simple thing to take every exam that the doctors recommend, unless it's really for the health of the woman herself directly.
Which exams were you talking?
Sometimes to check the health of the baby. how he's going to come out. Obviously you want to check the health of the baby. There's some things that are extra, voluntary exams that are not, they're optional. They're not really, really required. But the doctors want to know everything. Because what do they hold? Oh, if you don't like what you see, abort. A frum woman is not going to abort. So, it's better not to know certain things before the time. So that's a whole different issue. There are certain exams that therefore are not recommended. Then, in any event, if she did have some sort of exam, she always should find out what kind of an exam it was to make, of course, that decision if, in fact, she has to now keep the whole cycle of Niddah or not. Even if she didn't see blood, it could be an issue. It could be a problem. If there's no blood, however, at all, after she checks herself, then she could be fine, depending, of course, on the size of the tube, depending on what kind of an exam she had. Okay, we'll stop over here.